In December of 2001, Debbie and the children went to Durban to visit her parents. Tony stated that he had to work and refused to go. During their visit, Tony would allegedly call the kids and tell them that he was getting them quad bikes. Almost everyone was excited, but it became clear that their eldest son, Kevin, wasn't falling for his father's lies and false promises anymore. Unbeknownst to them, Tony had plunged himself into insurmountable financial debt. He had used the money from their previous home to pay off the most urgent, but it wasn't enough, and he hadn't paid the rent or the children's school fees in months. Come the day that the children went back to school, Tony would have to explain why there's no money for uniforms or stationery. On the 15th of January in 2002, the last few days of the school holiday were running out. Kevin had arranged for a friend to sleep over, and Caitlin had arranged to sleep over at a friend's house. Without warning, later that evening, Tony drove to Caitlin's friend's house and demanded that Caitlin come back home and clean her room. Upon returning, he drove Kevin's friend home as well. Around 9 p.m. that evening, Debbie got the children into bed and then went to bed herself. She stated that she woke around 5 p.m. to go to the bathroom and then went back to bed. The only detail she can remember about the events that followed was a vague shadow of a man approaching her with an axe. Allegedly, this axe first appeared at their home 6 weeks prior to the murders. 1 week prior, it had been moved inside the house to Tony's study. After striking Debbie multiple times on the head, he moved on to each of the children's rooms, one by one, axing them as well. Tony would then wrap each of the children in the blankets of their bed and drag them into his study, where he piled them on top of each other and doused them with petrol. He proceeded to set them alight before shooting himself point blank. Tony had died instantly. However, the children's post-mortems revealed smoke in their lungs, suggesting that they were unconscious but still alive when they were set on fire. Firefighters arriving at the scene were delayed due to the fact that the house was locked with a chain and padlock. Upon hearing this later, Debbie stated that they never owned a chain and a padlock, and never chained their doors closed. Firefighters who had discovered Debbie initially thought that she was deceased, as the top part of her skull was completely gone. Luckily, one of them noticed that Debbie's hand was moving. Her lungs were pumped full of pure oxygen, and her exposed brain matter had been covered with gauze before she was airlifted to the Groote Hospital. During the investigation, Tony's web of lies and deceit would finally unravel. It became known that Tony was so deep in debt that almost none of their bills were up to date. Allegedly, he still owed money on the car that he told Debbie had bought cash. Her parents arrived at the hospital the next day and were told the gut-wrenching news that there wasn't much hope for their daughter. But despite having to undergo several surgeries, Debbie managed to prove the doctors wrong. The left side of her body was almost completely paralyzed, but she managed to pull through. Due to the fact that no one knew if Debbie would make it or not, a memorial service was held for the children, and their bodies were cremated while she was in a 3-week coma. Debbie had suffered from amnesia and would often ask doctors where her children were. Eventually, doctors decided, along with her parents, that it would be best to just tell her. One can only imagine the feeling she felt that day. About a year later, Debbie decided that the time has come for her to have her own service for her children. Even though they were cremated, their ashes were still at the funeral home waiting for her. She, along with her friends and family, held a service and spread their ashes into Kai Forest. Debbie has since been on a path of recovery and later decided that she needed to be a mother. Since she was single, she opted to use a sperm donation facility. On the 12th of November in 2005, she gave birth to a little girl she named Kylie. She said that they often visit to Kai Forest together to spend time with Kevin, Caitlin, and Craig. Today, she works as a motivational speaker, spreading her story and the awareness of other cases of familicide. Debbie says that she has forgiven Tony for what he has done to her, but she can never forgive him for what he did to their children. Until next time.